you say, okay, I'm not going to acquire another piece unless I complete one of these. When I complete one, I can acquire one. I will never have more than 6 pieces in my shop at any given time. I will limit myself. Now, what's hard about that is there is a serious fear of missing out. Like, serious.
Welcome to the Flipstoration Podcast, where we talk shop, discuss business, and share our stories. Whether you are brand new to flipping furniture as a side hustle, a seasoned professional furniture restorer, or simply someone who loves podcasts, there's room for you at our table. Welcome to the Flipstoration Podcast.
Well, hey guys, it's Gary at Flipstoration, and I'm trying something new today. I'm actually going to be recording a podcast on my way into the studio where I do a lot of their refinishing work and recording and video and all that. So I wanted to try something out because something that I have grown to believe is that a lot of times perfection is the enemy of execution. And I think that we have lived, especially in the business world, sort of with this belief that if you can't do it perfectly, then don't do it. And I've seen a lot of people try to, overextend themselves to try to perfect something, and you end up just wasting a lot of time, resources, and energy just trying to make something that much more perfect. And generally speaking, you can get something that's 80% pretty darn good, and that extra 20% most people don't even really notice that much. Some people might, some super detail-oriented people might notice, but for the most part, you can get that 80% done pretty well, and that's what matters. And most importantly, you've done it. You've actually gotten it done. And I think sometimes when we're afraid of not being perfect, we end up not doing anything, or again, just overextending ourselves. So today I wanted to talk to you about how perfection can be your worst enemy, a perfectionist mindset. It can be a strength and it can be a weakness. That's like most cases. So I'm on my way into the studio, and I have this time where I'm just driving in. Now, most people would say, you're not going to record a podcast in a car. That's not a controlled environment. There's going to be background noise, and there's going to be, occasionally some distractions and things like that. And I say, you know what? I don't buy it. I think you can record on your way in to work. I think you can do whatever you want. And now you think about it. I mean, if you have a commute every day, it's like, how much time do you spend just driving? And how much time, how much can that time be utilized for something of value? Now, something I like to do when I'm in the car is I like to listen to podcasts. I like to listen to audiobooks. I like music, but I find that a lot of times music, I actually prefer when I'm working, when I'm trying to just have my head in the game with a project. Sometimes trying to listen to an audiobook or a podcast can be distracting for me. So when I'm in the car and I'm just driving, it's a great time for me to listen to something and learn, but also, why not record a podcast? So I'm enjoying my Americano from Starbucks, and I'm heading into my studio to do some work today and to potentially record some content. But yeah, the other day I was listening to a podcast, and it was on the founders of Vineyard Vines. It started with the founders spending summers on Martha's Vineyard and with their family. So that's kind of where it came from. They just love that culture. But one thing they said in the episode that really stuck out to me was there was a point where they had a mentor, and the mentor said, listen, you're going to be tempted to keep adding a lot of new products. It's very easy to add SKUs, and he challenged them to set goals and like almost as like a governor for themselves, like something that would kind of help pace themselves as they grew. And so they set a goal for 5 million in sales on just their ties, because they started with neckties. And they said, okay, we're not going to add in more SKUs, like different products, until we hit 5 million in sales with just the ties. And so they did that. And then after they hit the 5 million, they were able to introduce some new items. I thought, that's kind of cool. So this is where learning about furniture flipping and refinishing, as much as it is about techniques and products and, all of that. If you're a furniture refinisher, restorer, flipper, you are running a business. You're a business owner. And so there's much more to it than just simply doing the work. It's running the day-to-day business. It's managing your operations. And so I like to learn from businesses and business people in all different industries, because it's important to always be taking the kind of the maple syrup out of the sap, in a sense. So I say that because I'm Canadian and maple syrup is dear to my heart. I find that a lot of times there's a lot of sap. When you're making maple syrup, there's just you have to gather a lot of sap. But then when you boil it down, you find the maple syrup. You get the maple syrup. That's the good part. That's the part that you want. And a lot of times you'll read a book or listen to a podcast or something like that. And there's a lot of information, and a lot of it has nothing to do, like, when they were talking about, sourcing, their silk and, things like that. There's some stuff in there I'm sure I could probably learn too. But for me, the maple syrup was, how can I set up systems to prevent myself from overextending too quickly? And that was the thing that really stuck with me. How could we, as furniture refinishers, restorers, and flippers, utilize that principle? And so I immediately thought of, first of all, the story of a lot of furniture flippers or resellers. There's a lot of refinishers out there. You may be one, where you don't really do client work. You source furniture and you redo it in some form and you sell it for a profit. Now, you might be painting a free piece you find on the side of the road and flipping it for just a small profit. You might be sourcing some rare, antiques and restoring. But pretty much the idea is you have to go out and find items and then put the labor in and then put them up for sale. And then once it sells, you make your money. Now, I don't know about you, but have you ever, by show of hands, have you ever been sitting in your workspace, your workshop, whatever it is, wherever it is that you're doing the work? You sit back in your favorite chair that you have in your workspace and you start surfing Facebook Marketplace for another project. But yet, if you just looked up, you would see half a dozen, maybe more projects sitting right in front of you. But for some reason, it's the thrill of the hunt. Because finding furniture and sourcing furniture, oftentimes that gives you that sense of accomplishment, because you feel like you're doing something. You're doing something business related. You're looking for furniture items. You're contacting the seller. You're, setting up a time to go acquire the item. All these things take effort, and they give you a sense of gratification, a sense of accomplishment. I've done something. I heard it once from somebody, I don't remember who or where, but those people who like are about to do a 5K, their first 5K, or some sort of a thing they announce ahead of doing it, whatever it is. I'm gonna do this. I'm going to whatever, New Year's resolution. I'm gonna change this about myself. A lot of times they don't follow through, and it's because a lot of times they'll announce it on social media and to their friends or followers or whatever, and people will congratulate them for what they're going to do or what they say they're going to do. And so that congratulations, that encouragement gives them the feeling of almost already having done it. Like, it's the same kind of thing when you say, I ran a 5K, and people go, wow, that's amazing, great job. It's very similar to when you say, I'm going to run a 5K. People go, wow, that's amazing, good job. And so you get the same sense. You get the same sense of whatever, that endorphin rush or whatever. But yet now you haven't done it. Technically, you don't have to do it. So you don't do it most of the time. That's kind of the problem, is that we let those feelings lead us. And I am guilty as anyone for this. Trust me, this is not preaching at you. This is me just saying this is, something I think a lot of us deal with. We need to set up a system that prevents us from getting in our own way and being our own worst enemy. Well, pretty simple. When you're thinking of buying another piece of furniture or acquiring another piece of furniture, set some sort of a benchmark you have to meet before you can. Let's say you've got, just for conversation, you've got 6 pieces sitting in your garage or your shop, wherever it is you're working, your workspace, and you say, okay, I'm not going to acquire another piece unless I complete one of these. When I complete one, I can acquire one. I will never have more than 6 pieces in my shop at any given time. I will limit myself. Now, what's hard about that is there is a serious fear of missing out. Like, serious. And it's not just missing out on some cool piece, it's missing out on the deal. You're afraid that if you're not on Facebook Marketplace every day sourcing pieces, that you might miss out on just some amazing home run of a deal. And you might. Someone else might get an amazing piece that could have been yours, but you've decided to operate differently. You've decided to set up systems. And systems help to prevent us from getting in our own way. Because what happens is now you have, let's say you have to spend some money on this item. Okay, it's not free. It's not every item is free. Most of them aren't. You usually have to pay something. So you've got money tied up into it. You've got money tied up in an item. You've got space tied up in this item. So your shop space is tied up, whatever that looks like. And you need to move it around. How many times have you been moving pieces around just to make space to do the work you need to on other things? There's all this extra cost tied up into it. It's inefficient. Even though, yeah, you got a good deal, the inefficiencies and the wastes that kind of plague those choices can end up costing a lot more, but that cost is sort of invisible. It's not a dollar amount, it's just little things that little by little add up. And then there's just the mental how would I say it, kind of just the overwhelm you can get when you have more projects than you can complete, and you just feel kind of overwhelmed. You feel like, man, like I just feel like I've got so much to do and I can't get anywhere. And there's that part of it too. So, a simple system can be just set a limit. Say, I am going to only allow myself to have another item in my shop once I get this done, whatever it is. You said it. And it doesn't even have to be super strict. It could just be when I complete a piece, I'm permitted to then purchase something else or source something else. Because again, free is also a problem. If something's free, it still counts. Even though you're not paying for it, it still counts. It's another item, it's another thing in your life. You have to manage, you have to move around, you have to go get, you have to, all that stuff. It's all part of it. You have to consider that, okay? So, setting up that system. Then I thought about that principle or that concept from sort of the perspective that I have.
Hey guys, Gary over at Flipstoration and the Flipstoration Podcast. First of all, thank you for taking a listen to this episode of the Flipstoration Podcast. Be sure to go back and take a listen to all of Season 1 and also all the episodes from Season 2. We've got some really great interviews and some really fun topics we've gone over, and we're going to continue to do so with future episodes. But definitely go back and take a listen to those. And also head over to our Instagram, which is at Flipstoration, and give that a follow and join in the conversation over there as we post content along the way. We're going to be hopefully updating that even more as time goes on. We're excited to watch that grow, watch that community expand and grow. So definitely follow over there and tell others too about what we're doing so they can come along for the journey with us as we're trying to build this community and share the knowledge base we have with each other and just help each other thrive. So definitely do those things and enjoy the rest of this episode.
And at one point, I should say at quite a long period of time, but it was towards the end of my full-time, this is all I do, refinishing and restoration career. I had a waiting list that was generally about a year long. And it was a sloppy year. I mean, I say it was a year, but frankly, it could have possibly been more. I mean, with refinishing and restoration work, you really never know how long something's going to take. So it just got so overwhelming. It really did. I mean, I would hear people complaining about not having work, and I'd be like, man, I wish I just didn't have so much, because it was just, people don't know. They don't know what's going on. And when you're a small operation, they don't understand. Like, you don't have some giant team of Oompa Loompas or something like Willy Wonka who could just pump out your furniture, That you don't have that. It's literally you. It's you struggling through every project, making every choice, and recovering from any mistakes or any issues. And they just don't account for that. So they don't realize, or they don't understand, oh, well, you said you were going to start my project this week. Why aren't you ready? Why, didn't you schedule it? Yeah, it's not quite that easy with hands-on restoration work. It's not quite that, clean. We wish it was, but it's not. So, knowing that, and this is something I honestly, if I could go back and kind of restart, if I was restarting a refinishing business, I would implement this early. I would create slots of time, and I would be generous with these slots of time. I would look at a piece and say, okay, this should take this long to complete, and be realistic with how flow is. Obviously, an item you might say, oh, okay, this is going to take 10 hours, of steps, but it's not, you're not going to have it done in a day and a half. It's gonna bleed through several days. You're gonna have, other things happening and whatever else. So you just be realistic with what the time is. And that, I'm just coming up with this as I'm talking. It could be that, okay, this item takes 10 hours, but you just sort of budget 30 hours of time, just knowing that it's going to I'm not talking labor time, I'm talking just like time in the shop, just like being there. So, it might take, the better part of a week to get it totally done. And again, if your setup is inefficient, you almost have to draw the line in the sand and say, okay, I'm going to start doing this, because if you try to implement this, on top of already having, a long list of customers waiting or projects already in process, it's going to be hard to implement. You kind of have to find a point where you say, okay, after this point, I really don't have any new projects, so I'm going to begin implementing this then. Now, in scheduling ahead of time, you could start to implement it, meaning that if okay, I'm booked through June, okay, so you're going to start your slots in July. So anyone new who's calling in, you'll say, hey, I have slots available in July. And you'll say, currently I've got 3 slots available in July. I have the first week, the second week, and the third week of July available. Would you like me to schedule you for one of those slots? Whatever the case may be, you're going to have those projects that you really want to squeeze in. And if you don't have order and you don't have a system, squeezing in projects only hurts you and only hurts your clients. That's the bottom line. Because you end up having a full plate and trying to shove something else in there. And so someone's going to carry that. It could be a client that had been waiting a while. They're on your list. Maybe you've already started their project, whatever it is, but they should be the priority, but now this other project sort of takes priority over them, and now they start to get neglected. They feel it. They're kind of frustrated, whatever it is. Now, so they're getting hurt. Or it could be you, in the sense that you say, okay, I've got to make up this time, so honey, I've got to go in and work, overtime and late hours and all this stuff, which sometimes you just have to do that. That's not there's no shame in that, but you can't build your business around that model, or else you'll burn out very quickly. So it's important to leave flex. And I would say if you're looking at having, again, I'm just making up this number, but if you're looking at having 4 projects a month, let's just say 1 project a week, that's going to take your, the majority of your time. You may want to just schedule 3 each month and then move to the next month, leaving that week open. Because what's the worst that could happen? Nothing comes up and you're able to call someone up and say, hey, I have an opening a little sooner. Would you like to take that slot? And they'd be thrilled because you're ahead of schedule and it looks great to them. Whereas if you are overbooked and you keep bumping them forward and forward and forward, and they'll start to feel like, okay, like this is starting to get old. And now you're starting off on the wrong foot. They're kind of already a little bit sour. It's not a great way to. So I would say, I'm pulling up to my studio now, the Flipstration studio. I would say that it's important to consider setting up systems for yourself. And that one is a very practical one. I think that's something that you could do right away, or start implementing fairly easily. And it could be transformational because you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your customers. You need to give every project the best version of yourself, not the burnt out, overtired, frustrated, angry. You need to give every project the best that you can so that every customer leaves feeling that you really cared for them and cared for their project, and that they see that you have order. And I'll say this, I'll end with this. No can be one of your most powerful words. No. When someone's pressuring you to come down on your price, no, sorry, that's my price. When they're pressuring you to prioritize them over another customer, you could say, no, I'm sorry, I've already booked people, so I would love to work with you, but it would have to be at this time. Just sometimes no needs to be said, I also would say that by having this system, you can move these slots around like tiles in a sense. So you think about, you have someone the first week of June, and your next available slot might be the beginning of July. But someone is really in need for a specific, maybe they're moving or some reason, there's like a time sensitive thing. There's a baby coming, they need something done. Everyone has those things. There's an anniversary they want to try to meet. They're thinking a little last minute, but they need it by a certain date. Well, you can say, well, unfortunately, I can't take it in sooner, but I can ask a few people ahead of you if anyone's willing to move and like kind of trade slots with you. And some people might be. You might be able to call up one of those people or send them an email or whatever it is and say, hey, I have someone who's under a real crunch for time. And I know you've been waiting and you've been very patient. I appreciate that. Are you interested? Would you be willing to, kind of give up your slot and take the next available, which would be and they might be like, oh, that's totally fine. I'm in no rush. That's not a problem. You could even incentivize them and say, listen, if I took 10% off of your project, would you be willing to move forward a little bit? And you just tell the other person that, just like any other company, and it's funny, if you order any products and you say, I need it rushed, there's always a rush fee. You can say, listen, I can get this done for you, but I incentivize the client to give up their spot by giving them a discount. So I'm going to need to charge that much more on your project. So if it's a 10% discount that is equivalent to X amount of dollars, you have to make that up somewhere. So you have to take care of yourself and your business, because your business is no good to anyone if you're out of business. And I just want to say this, and this is going back to the beginning of the episode, that sometimes we get so many ideas in our head, and until we feel like we can be perfect with them, we don't actually implement them. And this is a really simple one that you can implement. Don't overthink it. Just start looking at your calendar like slots, and you'll find along the way that you will say, oh, I could actually do more than this. Maybe I'm not budgeting it. I'm budgeting too much time for these projects, and they really don't need that much. So maybe I can take a little of the wiggle out and have it be a little bit tighter. And that's great. Maybe you realize that you could do 2 projects every week instead of 1, and the way that you stagger them, whatever works. That's great, but don't overextend yourself. Use the data that you gather over time and say, what's this really like? How is this really working? And just make tweaks along the way. But just understand that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it's important to have systems. And this is just an example of one system that can help you not become your own worst by leaning on the word yes and neglecting to say no, or I'm sorry, that won't work a little bit more often. So guys, thank you so much for going on the drive into work with me today. And I hope that this shows you that just using a time in a car, you can do a lot, and you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to be perfect. That sometimes just getting something done is better than being a perfectionist that doesn't get anything done. All right, have a great day, guys.
The Flipstration podcast is sponsored by Stripwell. Stripwell makes the QCS line of products. If you're looking for a furniture stripper that is safe for you, safe for your projects, and safe for the planet, then look no further than QCS Finish Remover and the QCS Surface Cleanser. That is the QCS system, and that is what you're looking for. So check it out at stripwell.com, and be sure to subscribe to the Flipstration podcast.